Tomorrow night, Brett Butler is here, and UFO writer Whitley Strieber, and then on Wednesday night, to close out Sweeps ratings, we figure we better get Dave on here before he, stops signing the checks. And by the way, Dave, they're cashing nicely, thank you. The jury gets restless. Judge Ito gets nasty at the Nicole Simpson, Ronald Goldman murder trial, and joining us now for a return visit is our friend Jeffrey Toobin, former prosecutor who now writes insightfully for the New Yorker magazine. By the way, Mr. Toobin is named in a lawsuit filed by Detective Mark Furman. The suit is in connection with a story he wrote last summer. I understand that you are precluded from talking about that, but there is plenty of other stuff to cover. And I'd like to begin with the, well, first of all, the headline I showed in the New York Post. 7,800,000,000 to 1 against innocence. Not that the jury is going to see this. Does it change any perceptions, do you think?
Well, the jury does see this. I mean, the jury saw all those odds, not just that one, repeatedly on all these odds. So this for once is something that's going on right in front of the jury, and they can accept it or reject it. But this has been an overwhelming portion of the government's case.
And as a prosecutor, how good a case is this case that they've got right now?
Well, what's remarkable about this part of the evidence is how much it's changed the defense, how much the defense in this case has really changed since Johnny Cochran's opening. Going back, if you recall, 7 or 8 years ago when this trial started, Cochran said, DNA, maybe it's reliable, maybe it's not.
They challenged DNA.
They challenged DNA.
Now they're challenging how it was collected.
Well, exactly. What they're saying is, yes, that was Nicole's blood on the sock. Yes, that was O.J.'s blood in the foyer. But it was planted. That the government. Why are you laughing, Tom?
I'm not laughing.
The evidence is the defense has completely gone into the conspiracy mode, which means that, I mean, this trial is going to get a lot uglier before it's over.
Let me ask you here, though, if you're sitting on a jury, and whether you're African American, Caucasian, or Hispanic, and you see this overwhelming flood of blood evidence, and you hear the numbers 7 billion to 1, it's almost as you said, the jury and the prosecution peered into the microscope and they saw O.J. waving back.
Well, but what's clever and about the defense is that it's what prosecutors call a judo defense, is that it takes the strength of the government's case and uses it against it. If the defense is, look, of course it's O.J.'s blood there, because the cops planted it there, then you don't have to worry about 7 billion to 1. Then Johnny Cochran can get up there and say, of course it's O.J.'s blood, because Furman, Van Adder, Lang, whoever, sprinkled it along the ground in order to frame Mr. Simpson.
What about that possibility of a police conspiracy, considering the time frame involved here? O.J. left for Chicago at 11:30 on a Sunday night. He was back in Los Angeles Monday evening. Would they have had...
He was back Monday morning.
Or Monday morning.
Back in 6 hours.
Would they have had time here, considering the time available that they did all this testing, to have planted all this stuff at all these venues?
It's certainly a challenge, especially when you consider that the other part of the defense is how incompetent the police are, how they're the gang that couldn't shoot straight. But remember, you can't take this case out of its context, which is the Los Angeles Police Department and Daryl Gates and Rodney King,
yes,
and the history of the relationship between the LAPD and the black community.
Although when you consider the Friday that O.J. went for the ride in the Bronco, and somehow he got away from the LAPD, and we were all in New York at the time at a company party for the other network, as we said, it's pretty tough to lose O.J. Simpson. It ain't like you have to call the guys in, to the squad room and say, show the Hertz commercial and say, by the way, it's that guy. It's not really not that. Let me ask you here about the jury's call for speeding up. They want longer sessions. They want to work on Saturday. What are they saying?
Well, I mean, just the experience of sitting in there week after week listening to DNA testimony. I don't know, have you ever been on dialysis?
No.
I mean, that's about as painful as it is sitting in there. I mean, it's just agonizing. It is so boring, and it is so slow. But well, the prosecution is quite pleased by this note, because one could interpret this note as, look, we've heard the key evidence, let's wrap it up. That's something the government would like to hear.
Judge Ito has changed his tune. He threw a couple of reporters out the other day from Court TV, you're shaking your head, and USA Today. He has been a little bit more petulant with the attorneys, both defense and prosecution. What's going on with him?
Well, the O.J. Simpson case generally, I think, is one of the great reputation killers in America, and I think Judge Ito is really one who has really suffered under this case. He has behaved abominably, I think, of late. He has been petulant, he has been nasty. I react personally because the two reporters who were thrown out, Kristen Jeanette Myers and Gail Holland, are colleagues and friends of mine who were really treated miserably for no good reason.
You know, if you listen to the radio or watch television or read the papers, you would get the feeling that they were talking loudly, that they were interrupting the proceedings, that they were somehow making it impossible for the jury members to hear what was happening on the witness stand.
I mean, in the course of this trial, everyone has talked a little. Everyone who's ever sat in a courtroom has whispered a little bit. What they did was inappropriate and wrong, but the punishment was wildly out of proportion. It seems to me the judge is cracking down in some good ways. Court starts on time, lunch is only an hour, the breaks really are only 15 minutes. But the real problems in why this trial is taking so long, he hasn't done a thing about, which means unlimited cross-examination on every witness, unlimited direct examination. You know, not every judge, most judges would say, look, you can't cross-examine for 4 days.
Well, you've had experience as a prosecutor.
That's right.
Yeah, what have judges said to you?
Judge will say, well, how long do you need to put in your case? 3 weeks. Fine, you have 12 days. Yeah. How long is your defense? How long do you need to cross-examine? 4 days. Fine, you have 2. That's not a violation of anyone's rights. That's protecting the jury's right to have a reasonable life, to protect a sequestered jury that is losing people right and left. That's the way a judge needs to crack down, not being rude to people. I don't think that accomplishes
There was
much
a
at all.
story in the morning papers that members of the press corps covering the trial here had signed a letter to Judge Ito asking for the reinstatement of the two aforementioned journalists. And what did that letter say?
It was a very respectful letter saying that we know Kristen, who's with Court TV, and Gail with USA Today, saying we know them to be serious journalists. We know that they're apologetic for what they did, and we just urge them to, we urge the judge to let him back in. It was a very respectful and appropriate
so far, no
letter.
Response.
And it was very ineffective, yes, so far. It's just not a thing.
Like if the judge were to be watching this program tonight and he were to hear what you said about him, could he point the finger at you tomorrow for what you did?
I think it would be inappropriate for my exercise of my First Amendment rights here. And I've actually written in the New Yorker very favorably about Judge Ito. I think on his legal rulings in the case, in terms of what evidence he's admitted, he's been very much right on the ball. But I think his control of the courtroom has vacillated a great deal from overly loose to petulant and inappropriate.
And as you say, the jury might be the ones suffering the most because of the length of cross-examination.
They did get to ride on a blimp this weekend, though.
And they went to see Miss Saigon.
That's right.
Yep. They may well convict Judge Ito. We will be back with Jeffrey Toobin, who writes for the New Yorker magazine on the O.J. Simpson trial, and you as time permits at 800-952-2788. We'll be right back after these messages.